graphic wall. Cenk Uygur is here, ladies and gentlemen. It's a classic uncle nephew face off, as I have talked about already. For those of you who don't know, Cenk wrote a book. This is a fucking hit me in the face. Cenk wrote a book called Justice is Coming, How Progressives Are Going to Take Over the Country and America is Going to Love It, which is, I mean, I'm a very cynical person. I don't think, I'm a very pessimistic person. I don't think it's happening anytime soon, but maybe you'll make an argument for that. Yeah, we're going to talk about your book, and we're going to talk about another thing that you literally didn't tell me while you were announcing it, which is that you're running for president. And of course, I'm going to ask you why or even how, but either direction are significantly more important in bludgeoning people with reality than the media moving in a specific direction. I'm also a believer that, like, under an inherently oppressive construct, yes, you can inevitably shift the attitude in the more reactionary on the more reactionary side of things, and unfortunately the only way to stop that is by waiting it out and just eating the pain. But I don't think that the media can get together. Like, let's say if tomorrow MSNBC, CNN, and mainstream media were no longer owned by the same corporate entities, and we're actually doing objective journalism across the board, and not whenever like it is like anti-Trump, which drives clicks or whatever, and it's permissible, right? I don't think that would cause a genuine sea change in the way that I think you believe that.
Yeah, I think a progressive would be president the next day. Okay.
I think that they would play a very significant role in changing people's attitudes, but the reality is that could never happen in our current structure regardless. There would be need for a world where the material realities were different.
But the material realities are different. So we've got every single thing lining up for us. Younger voters, the destruction of mainstream media, rise of new media, but also objective reality. So, for example, why did FDR do incredibly progressive things? Why did LBJ, at least on social issues, do incredibly progressive things? Because
the economic realities, one, demanded it, and two, there was more pushback from outside groups at the time. There was more militant labor, and people were recognizing the writing on the wall about America's dire economic circumstance.
It's exactly right. And what's the situation we're in now? Almost exactly the same thing. Now we need to build the labor movement. We need to build more direct action.
I agree. That's why I do what I do. I think a lot of people don't understand that. The only place that I have any sort of optimism for the future is in the labor movement, which is why I do what I do. I want to change people's minds about certain things and allow them to see for themselves the autonomy that they can have and change their immediate workplaces, somewhere that they spend 80% of their adult lives in, and therefore set up the groundwork for a mechanism of pushback against the Democratic Party and force the Democratic Party's hand to do the right thing when it's a necessity to do so.
And look, all smart progressives are going in the same exact direction, right?
Yeah.
So
I've been on that direction.
Yeah, so my co-host Anna's obsessed with the labor movement. Totally believes that's the answer. Nina Turner, who's another host on our network, just announced today that she set up a new group with Chris Smalls to back the labor movement and to even get funding for the labor movement whenever they go on strike, et cetera. And so that's what pushed FDR. That's what's going to push the next generation. Because, Haas, the economic situation isn't going to fix itself. Like, the old line of power never concedes without a demand, never has, never will. So we've got to demand it. And right now, since the economic situation is so bad for workers, they keep demanding it, right? So more demands.
It's not just that either. It's all, yes. It's also, there is actually a real tight labor market and not a tight labor market with like, you're right, though. The confidence is different because we've already had tight labor market periods where income has not increased in the way that it's supposed to. Real income, real wages have not increased in the way that it's supposed to. And even economists are baffled by this reality. Well, the reason for that was because labor had lost and capital had won that war. Whereas
totally
now, in a post-COVID world, I think with the unimaginable amount of profits that these corporations are raking in, labor has a decent bargaining position because they saw that, if people just simply didn't go back to work, that people were fucked.
Yeah. So look, they took and they took and they took and they took too much. And so this is how we get to balance. We push back. So we're in the middle of pushing back. And so everything is trending in our direction. The only thing is we can't, snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. And there's two icebergs ahead. And so I'm not Pollyannish. I see the icebergs probably better than anybody else does. And I'm really worried about it, okay? One is the progressive movement, honestly, and this is where you and I can begin to disagree, getting too radical and too away from what most Americans want. And the second iceberg.
What do you mean by that?
Yeah. So look, saying things like all sports leagues, including professional ones, has to allow trans women. They don't have a choice, etc. That polls at like 2%. You say, hey, it's a moral issue. It's really important.
Do you think
sports leagues are like the most important thing in the whole wide world?
Do you think it's actually a significant issue? Do you think that is a significant issue or a driver of the conversation, or cynically weaponized by Republicans with like some liberals taking the bait and then having a conversation about it instead of being like, fuck off, nobody cares about this, stop talking about this immediately?
Yeah. Well, that's exactly what the right wing does. They weaponize every single issue. What I'm trying to get progressives to do is stop falling in the trap. So the minute they say it,
but do you think,
our side comes out and goes, no, this is the most important issue. And anyone who disagrees is a Nazi. You just called 98% of the country Nazis.
Okay.
What are you doing? You're alienating voters like crazy.
Do you think that organizers on the ground, both trans and cis, that are or members of labor unions are even using this as a talking point in any meaningful capacity, or is it simply reactionary Republicans bringing this up because they tried and unsuccessfully failed to push the anti-trans button with bathroom bills?
Except for the fact that they passed all those bills, which I despise. I hate those bills.
Let me just clarify something here. In the lead up to the 2016 election, you had the North Carolina bathroom bill that was anti-trans, right? You have to have the gender assigned at birth be the bathroom that you go to.
That totally failed.
Okay,
That's right.
That failed. That was so objectively a failure that Donald Trump came out and said, I don't give a fuck where Caitlyn Jenner shits as long as she's shitting in Trump Tower, right? Something along those lines.
But
I'm
then
paraphrasing.
He tried to ban them from the military.
Hold on. Let me finish.
That was also unpopular. Sorry, go ahead.
Let me finish. Okay? Yeah, he tried to ban trans people from the military. That was also unpopular. So, what did Republican interest groups do? The family, moral family, Christianity fundamentalist groups. What did they do? They went back to the drawing board and they looked for a reasonable sidestep that would still be anti-trans, that would open the door to anti-trans conversations that they could push for that was more popular. What did they find? They found that Americans love the concept that is bullshit. Meritocracy. What is the most meritocratic process in the entire country, maybe in the world? Sports. Americans love sports, and Americans believe that meritocracy is real, and it's especially real in sports. So they changed the narrative away from trans people can't pee and poo in the fucking bathrooms to trans people want to destroy sports. It was simply just another way to attack trans people, which is precisely why I think a lot of people correctly looked at that and went, why the fuck are we talking about this? This is ultimately marginal. You just want to fucking eliminate trans people from public spaces. And I have never given an ounce of legitimacy to that argument, despite what public polling says, because the reality is no one gives a fuck about it. Let me tell you something that's more important than public polling, however. Because you brought up...
So far, I don't even see where we disagree.
Okay, so you brought up state legislatures, Republicans like passing incredibly, horrifyingly psychotic anti-trans bills.
Yeah.
Okay? And they're passing this. Yet there is no viable single issue voter out there that is like desiring these anti-trans bills. Although if you ask, Americans directly about like, what do you think about a 14-year-old trans girl like participating in a swim meet? They might say 56% might say, fuck that. That's wrong. We shouldn't do that. But the reality is there isn't any real momentum on the ground for anti-trans shit. Okay. Voters do not give a fuck about trans people overall. The overwhelming majority of voters actually have apathy for trans people. They just don't care about it because they think that there's no trans people in their lives whatsoever. Republicans, however, have kept on pushing the anti-trans button over and over again and made it their major fucking talking point.
That's right.
That has yielded horrifyingly bad results for them. And instead of like fucking assassinating Christopher Rufo, for example, who's one of the leading guys here at the Manhattan Institute that was like doing the CRT stuff, doing the anti-trans stuff, instead of going, dude, what the fuck are you doing? You ruined our midterm chances when Biden had a historically bad economy, when a red tsunami was supposed to happen. That was a major failure on their part, one that actually has led to Kevin McCarthy's ouster as the speaker right now, a domino effect of like the Republican Party imploding in and of itself, partially because the only thing that they have been looking for, the only thing that they have, the only tangible policy position is just increasing the dial of transphobia, but there's not enough people on the ground who are demanding it. And those who are demanding it are increasingly more psychopathic, which is pushing away normal fucking Republican voters who are just like, I just want tax cuts, man. Like, I'm racist, sure, but like, the fuck's going on? Like, I don't give a shit about this. Like, why are you talking about dismembering children's genitals all the fucking time? You sound like a psycho. They're getting outrage fatigue, and it has demonstrably been a failure. And that's part of the reason why you don't see Trump talking too much about wokeness or trans people. He like brings it up every now and then in his commentary, but it is far less than Ron DeSantis, wouldn't you say, who is an objectively less popular candidate.
Yeah. So with the exception of Trump and DeSantis thing, which we can get into, I actually agree with everything you said. So now let me give it to you from my perspective and why I'm concerned about it. So, number one, Republicans bring this up because they're fishing and fishing. All their positions are deeply unpopular. So they're fishing for one position that they could finally get some sort of popularity on, right? So they dig all the way down to trans sports at the high school level, and they get over 70% saying, okay, no, meritocracy, we shouldn't do that, right? So if at that point, you and I agree, like, we fight back when they propose a bill, and we do the best we can, and we aggressively make the case that you just made and that I make all the time on the air, right? And then we're okay with it, and everybody would agree. The country is in favor of trans rights, okay? So, but in the midst of these conversations, one of the things that happens is, okay, on air, I say, okay, you're asking, fine. I think at the high school level, trans girls should be able to participate with biological girls because...
Why do you talk about that at all beyond how...
Because it comes up, because there's a bill.
No,
I'm fighting against the bill.
Okay, but why do you talk about it beyond it being a distraction, perfectly cooked up, because you said you agree with me. Why do you talk about it beyond it being a fucking bill that is laughably unpopular, so unpopular that like...
It's not so unpopular that it didn't pass in all the red states.
Wait, what?
The trans bills that passed, not about bathrooms, but about sports and all that horse crap.
But none of those bills were passed with popular support, Cenk.
I know they're passed by Republican legislators, and the Republican legislators are appeasing their base.
Okay,
and their base is maniacal, and their base wants it.
No, they're not. That you and I are entirely incorrect.
So they go fishing in that area. And in that conversation, I say, hold on, let me finish.
Okay.
I say, at some point, look, my real opinion is, at the professional level, yes, of course the leagues get to make their own decision. And sometimes, yes, trans women have an advantage, and the league is allowed to say, no, we're not going to allow it, okay? So what happens next? Every single person that I know in mainstream media saw that what they perceive as a progressive community then called me a Nazi. Then they go, okay, progressives are lunatics. I'm writing all of them off, right? Are you kidding me? because somebody's had like this microscopic difference of opinion with like the most radical end of the progressive base. They're right-wing pivot, Republican, Nazi. Well, okay, you guys sound nuts. Okay, and don't do that.
You think
just say, hey, I disagree. So what?
Mainstream media literally called you a bestiality-loving horse fucker when you tried to run for office in California. You think they needed the fucking... you think they needed like 11 trans people with anime avatars on Twitter calling you a Nazi to be like
on them on a platter?
That's crazy.
And
they
then
have
there
material
are real
interest.
issues that are much larger.
They have
that also cost us, and it makes it look like we are extreme when in reality 2/3 of the country's on our side. Take the fucking win. Take the win. So here's another one, and this one I don't know how you're going to light up on this one.
No, this is
defund the
important.
police. It's a terrible slogan.
Okay.
A terrible idea.
We're moving away. We're moving away from other talking points. Let's get back to the one issue that we were talking about. My perspective is that they have every interest to fuck you every single time. Mainstream media does, because of their underlying material interest in defending the corporate oligopoly structure that we have. This is who funds them. This is how people rise into positions of power in the media infrastructure. You've been a part of this already. Personally, you've seen it happen to you at MSNBC. So like, there is no reason why they're not looking at like magical trans people on Twitter and going, oh, that's it. Here's the reality. They're being crazy again. They're calling Cenk a Nazi.
Yes, they are. And they're looking for any excuse. I agree with that. But then stop giving them excuses, which is the point you started with.
Okay. There's a major disagreement here. We are at odds,
but we're not at odds. You say don't talk about it. I say don't talk about it. We say you say you're against the bill. I say I'm against the bill. You're for trans rights. I'm for trans rights. But my point is
but the difference is the same people that call you transphobic also called me transphobic all the fucking time. The difference is I don't change my perspective at the end of the day, or even offer it any fucking additional light, because who fucking cares? You just do what you think is right and you keep pushing. And I think that it's very dangerous and very scary when you get moved by your base of support that you have worked tirelessly for 20 years and like building and solidifying, turning on you and saying you're right wing now. I think that
didn't happen though. I agree with you. It's 11 people on Twitter, so our audience is just as gigantic as it's always been. So you can go ahead and cry about it if you're among those 11 people. So I'm not worried about that. Haas, I gave it as a small example, and defund the police is a much larger example.
Okay, we'll get to that in a second.
Progressives are getting pigeonholed by mainstream media and Republicans as radicals, when in reality we are the overwhelming majority of the country. So we need to focus and get our messaging right.
And that's why looking at a couple random people and greatly emphasizing the impact that they have, and even attributing like the mainstream media's perspective shift on progressives, when you and I both know that they never fucking gave a shit, and they don't even need like a couple of random trans people to call you a transphobe to like justify their hatred for progressives. Okay,
let's go to a larger
There's no
issue.
reason to talk about that. Now, as far as like, there was one other point that I wanted to make, because we were talking about state legislatures. This is really important, please. I think that a broader Republican project, and I think you'll agree with me on this, has been that they want to dismantle the power of the legislative body and then utilize the state legislatures where they know they have control due to gerrymandering and ridiculous district maps, where they can, even if they don't have popular support, even if they lose the majority of the votes, still maintain a majority in the House and the Senate, right? State House and state Senate.
It's one of the most important things in the country.
Absolutely. And then there's a secondary side to this, though, because there is the judiciary. So they've also they've dismantled the legislative body. They have pushed their power in undemocratic ways through the state legislatures, and then also solidified that power and codified it by court packing, right? So they have this very open project within the Federalist Society, all the way up to the Supreme Court of the United States, where they have hyper-reactionary judges that they've placed in positions of power through appointments, right? So when you do that, there is no need for a democratic process, which is precisely the reason why saying that these Republicans are actually acting out the desires of their psychotic, bloodthirsty base when they're pushing for, trans bills that are getting passed in every single state legislature is objectively false. Why is it objectively false? Because one, Republicans have never cared about their base. Let's be fucking real. They just use the culture war issues as a way to like draw up support. But in reality, they don't really give a shit about what the base wants. If they did, then they would have never in a million years allowed the Roe v. Wade decision to be overturned, because that was a much better way to just keep dangling in front of the most active base of support they have, white evangelical Protestants, and never actually push to actively dismantle Roe v. Wade and completely criminalize abortion in red states. That's why they have a major fuck up right now, because they're suffering from their own success. So I don't think that pointing to state legislatures and bills that they've passed to say, no, there is actually a decent amount of support for anti-trans legislation from the Republican base of support is correct, especially when all signs point to the opposite. At the national party level, the Republican Party is currently going through a crisis, an identity crisis. They have capitulated to incredibly bloodthirsty, psychotic fucking culture warriors for so long that they end up leading like Ron DeSantis, pushing for objectively unpopular bills, okay, by utilizing the state legislatures, and then suffering the consequences on the perception in the national party.
Yeah. So look, again, there's a lot I agree with, but let's break it down one by one. So it can be both, Haas. It can be that, yeah, they've done the gerrymandering. Gerrymandering has done most of the work for them, and it made their seats pretty much impenetrable. So if the Republican legislators do something, it doesn't necessarily mean that the voters of that state want it, for sure, right? But it can be that also the vicious end of the Republican base does want it, and the polling indicates that they do want it, right? And so, but the larger point here is,
I don't agree. I don't think they're.
Hold on. Let me be clearer, because it depends. If you say, do you hate trans people? The answer is no in the polling for American people. They are in favor of trans rights. They are in favor of treating trans people in the same exact way about employment, health care, etc., which is wonderful. And again, 2/3 of the country is progressive. Okay, so when you go to ask them about bathrooms, no. When you ask them about the military, no. These people are willing to give their lives for this country, and you don't want them. What kind of a monster are you? So the American people are on our side on all those things. That's why they had to go digging for this stupid high school sports thing, right? And on that, I've seen the polling, and it's over 70% of Americans are on the side of banning them, right? Now, I'm on the other side. I'm with the 30%. And leave the kids alone, right? It doesn't matter if your daughter was going to break a record or whatever. Just calm down. Stop checking the genitals of kids. You're sickos. Leave them alone, right? So, but having said that, what they're trying to do, Haas, and this is the oldest trick in the book, and they did this back in the 1980s, is they dig until they find something unpopular, and they make Democrats or the left wing attack them on it. So, for example, flag burning. So flag burning, everybody knows it's protected by the First Amendment. They know it's protected by the First Amendment, but they want to make it seem like we hate America and we hate the American flag and we all want to burn it. So they contrive this bullshit issue. No one's burning the American flag. Mm-hmm. It's happened like twice in the last 20 years. And then the Democrats can't help but say, well, it is a First Amendment issue. You can burn the flag, and they go, aha, you unpatriotic assholes, right? So so my point is the same point you're making, which is don't fall for that trap. So just say, hey, we disagree on this, move on.
You're saying don't fall for that trap and don't even defend it, or don't even, saying
defend on the bills, because when there's a bill, you have to defend.
Yeah.
But then point out super aggressively what the Republicans are doing wrong.
Chelsea Manning has a question for you. Q for Cenk. Is it possible that trans people are reacting the way we are because we hear people make these talking points, and the next thing we know, people are saying, this is why I had to become a conservative time and time again? And that right-wing slant is true for the likes of Dave Rubin and many others, even including like former TYT people. I think that's where a lot of people are defensive when they hear you talk about this, or when they hear people fall into the trap of like jumping on every single non-issue that ultimately turns into discourse, like bonus holes or whatever the fuck, like some psychotic weirdo British person came up with at the fucking Daily Mail, right? If you are even pushing that discourse as though this is like real and applied and genuinely a threat to democracy because it's something that everyone is like forcing you at gunpoint to utilize, then all of a sudden you are a culture warrior, whether you admit it or not, because these issues are distractions and they're stupid as fuck, and that nobody should even talk about it, let alone amplify it. I'll take it one step further, though. There is one other issue here, and that is the Democratic Party. What do reactionaries do? They have no agenda, right? They have no agenda. They react and they try to claw back civil liberties. That's their goal. And if the Democratic Party is not actually pushing, okay, if the Democratic Party is not actually pushing material realities to change in a positive way and giving something to the Republicans to react to, right, to fight against, then all of a sudden that the reactionaries are leading the discourse.
Yeah.
And that is the problem, which is why whenever issues like this come up, because listen, I have a very dynamic stream. People come in here all the time. They say a million different things and they want me to address it or they want me to talk about it. I am very terse, very strict about, like, whenever someone comes in and they're like, address what Anna said or address what Cenk said, I'm like, no, fuck off. I don't care. Shut the fuck up. We're talking about real issues. Okay? So,
but by the way, that's almost exactly what we said, and everybody called us Nazis. So not everybody, those folks. So look, guys, first of all, let's just be clear on everything, okay? So number one, I fight for trans rights. I have for 21 years when no one else was. So if you don't like it and you don't believe it, that's up to you. You can do whatever the hell you want, okay? So, and I just told you all my positions, which are actually 99% identical to the most extreme trans right activists, right? So we have a microscopic difference. So somebody asks me about it, I say it once, I'm done with it. I'm done with it. And then a giant pile-on starts because people want clout. They're like, oh, no, he's not as good as me. He's not as pure as me. He's a right-winger. He's a Nazi. Okay, so I'm like, I ignore it. And then they just keep going, and I don't give a shit. They could do whatever they want. Okay. But then don't pretend that I brought it up. No, you brought it up, and you made it a giant issue. And you're the one hurting the progressive cause and the trans rights cause. We win on every goddamn issue on trans rights. Why are you going and dying on the hill that no one agrees with you on? You're going to ruin trans rights on other issues. Okay. We're going to lose because you're being so extreme. And then every ally you have, you're like, nope, I'm going to be more pure than them. So I'm going to burn their bridge down. I don't want any allies. Okay, well then don't have any allies.
Okay, if both of our goals are aligned and we are interested in coalition building and actually fighting for justice, okay, there's two different things to do here. One is try to engage in purges and try to say this purity spiral is self-defeating, which I agree with you on.
100%.
Or the other thing is to just stay the course and just let people chirp into the void and never give them an ounce of pushback, because why? Every single if people are looking for class, if people are looking
get
for
out of here.
No, that's not a get out of here situation.
Here I'll tell you exactly what happens. This is really important because you know why? So so every time we say any little thing, all the other streamers and stuff, these come in and go, oh, we're better than the Young Turks. We're better than the Young Turks. We agree with you 200%. They're such monsters. And they clutch their pearls and stuff, and etc. And then we go, okay, guys, but hold on. We said a tiny thing. You guys said this nuclear reaction. Okay, say another tiny thing and defend our position for like 3 minutes on air, right? And then another round of nukes, right? We're better than the Young Turks. We're the most pure. We're the most progressive. Radical. We have to be the most radical. And if you don't believe us, then you're a Nazi. Well, and then I made it an issue. I talked about it for about a total of maybe 3 minutes in all of the Young Turks, okay? And then everyone else talked about it for 200 hours.
I know,
and pretended that it was us.
Okay, here's the thing. Here's the thing that there's two different parts here. One, you've immediately ascribed to bad faith arguments to these people. You're like saying they're cloud operated.
Do.
Okay, so one, that might not be the case. There might be genuine disagreements. That's number one. But at which point do you think, well, you know better than them, right?
No, they could disagree.
Okay,
I don't give a shit about
but listen. But like, okay.
But okay,
even
if
they are bad faith,
I'm going to call them Nazis.
Okay, even if they are bad faith, right?
Okay.
Even if they're bad faith, then what the fuck are you doing giving them more clout?
I don't.
No,
I don't say anything. And then they do 200 shows about it.
It doesn't matter.
And then pretend I'm the one saying it.
It doesn't matter.
So hey, can we agree that all the other, like Lance or whatever the fuck their names are?
No.
Oh, no. They should all shut the fuck up then. Okay, right? Right? Because that's what you're saying.
Dude.
Why are you making a big issue out of it? Because I only said it for 1 minute. They said it for 200 minutes. Why don't they shut the fuck up?
Oh my God, I'm gonna lose my mind.
I don't even understand what we're disagreeing about. So we agreed 99% on the issue, and we agree.
I think the major
99% that it's not a major issue, and people are making a big deal out of it.
I think the anger that people feel towards that sort of thing inevitably derives from offering any fucking light to that conversation, especially when you understand that it is just like bullshit talking points that have been focus tested and being brought up. The moment that you give it any validity, okay, and now I'm not even talking about like.
Let's talk about a general thing.
I'm not even talking about that. I'm not even talking about like talking to other leftist people or like defending your positions or whatever. I'm talking about how deeply and undesirably unproductive it is to offer any amount of consideration to literally talking points that are cooked up in a fucking laboratory about 0.1% of the fucking population.
As they do 200 shows back to back.
There are a million streamers.
Are you telling them?
There are a million streamers that have not only said things about you, but have said things about me as well. There's a difference between you and I, though, because no matter what happens, when people do write those things or people do say those things about me, I've learned the hard way not to give it any credence whatsoever and stay the fucking course. And ultimately, if people have made up their minds that I am a transphobic person, then that's, GG's. There's nothing I can do about that. If people think that I'm bad on racial issues or if I'm a misogynistic person, then there's nothing that I can change about their perspective. They are entirely too malleable, which is why I have assumed positions on so many things that the American population considers radical, whether it be foreign policy and what I believe in, or whether it be trans issues, even if it's something that Americans across the board consider to be like unpopular. The reason why I can stay the course in spite of that pushback is because I fucking ignore it, because I know that it is unproductive. That's it.
Yeah.
And the second thing I will say, and this is something that I try to talk to my audience about quite frequently, is that being a progressive is not about having black people or trans people hype you up all the fucking time. There are going to be plenty of moments where you are going to be at odds with activists. There is going to be plenty of moments where you have disagreements with the marginalized communities that you claim to speak on behalf of, okay? And ultimately, it's not even about a logical conclusion to those problems. It's about being empathetic, right? That's at the heart of the matter.
So let's
being
let's
empathetic.
do a super important distinction, okay? Because and I don't think I made a good enough case for this distinction, and I want to be way clearer. There's a difference between randos in the world that care about this issue, whether they agree with me or disagree with me, or they heard the wrong thing about me,
By the way,
or they have heard the right thing and they still think this guy's a Republican and I hate him. No problem, okay? And media figures, streamers, etc. Those guys are largely scorpions. And it's because the incentives and disincentives create scorpions. Because when you attack someone else, you get into the algorithm loop on YouTube, mainly YouTube, but in some other places as well, and you try to get attention. So they don't even know. I hope they don't know, a lot of them, that they're doing it on purpose. I hope they're not doing it on purpose, but probably some of them are, right? But they think like, no, this is really important. I have to correct the record by attacking the Young Turks. Oh, look at that. My views went up. What a wonderful coincidence. I'm going to do it again and again and again. And this is not just about radical left. Are you crazy? No way. The right wing started this. Why does Steven Crowder dress up as me?
Yeah.
Right?
I was about to say, listen.
Right?
Listen, but
So why did Jimmy Dore attack me like a nut job? Why did Sargon of Akkad go back like 15 years?
Partially
why
because
did Sam Harris? Why did all of them attack us?
Partially because you respond.
We're the largest.
Partially because you respond. It's called getting farmed. Trust me, I know from personal experience what that's like. For a very long time, I got farmed like a motherfucker, okay? Because just like you, perhaps because I am also as stubborn as you are, I couldn't shut the fuck up anytime there was like any error, okay? Whenever someone said, this is what Hasan believes or whatever the fuck, I immediately rushed to correct the record, thinking that there was good faith discussion to be had. Now, out of the people that are actually criticizing you, there are people who I do like, who I do appreciate. I'm not going to get into that part of the conversation because I feel like that's going to blow a lid in this. It's going to make you blow a gasket. But the reality is that ultimately, if you want to have a productive, if you want to have a productive and successful coalition, you just can't stress that shit out, okay? You can't.
No, I'm good with
even
it.
Even if
Look,
they
I
say
was super clear. You like what we're saying, you come to the Young Turks. If you don't like it and you want super radical weirdos, there's like a million shows for you.
That's what you're doing. Like you're casting everyone else in a bad light. Don't even talk about it. Don't even bring it up. That's it.
Okay, so I know I've been punched in the face 200 times, and I'm not allowed to punch back.
Exactly, 100%. That's what I'm saying. Yes, you get it. That is what I'm saying. That's what being fucking progressive is. Okay. If someone on your side is punching you, you ultimately turn around and say, I don't give a fuck. It's fine, because the real motherfucker whose face I have to punch is out there that actually holds on to all levers of power. Because while we're fucking arguing about the minutia of your perspective on trans issues, or whenever like you choose to engage in like any kind of reactionary framing of an issue, there are actual fucking people out there who are making everyone's lives actively worse. So why the fuck would I ever care about what some dumbass fucking YouTuber has to say when Ben Shapiro is, again, stealing our fucking lunch money and doing whatever the fuck is necessary to keep propagandizing every fucking awful position that makes people's lives worse. Right. That's why I fucking cover Ben Shapiro every day, by the way, you dumb cocksuckers in here who fucking think like, oh, why does Hasan talk about Ben Shapiro all the time? That's why. Because he's the fucking bad guy. You will never see me fucking agree with Ben Shapiro or Steven Crowder or any of those fucking bullshit charlatans out there, because those are the fucking bad guys. I don't give a fuck if people call me transphobic or racist or whatever the fuck. I'm not gonna stray away from my point of view, but more importantly, and I don't think you do either, but there's this one issue that you and I have, there's one disagreement, there's one difference that you and I have. You spend entirely too much time thinking about all the people on your side who fucking hate you, okay? Who say you're bad and wrong, even if it's a misunderstanding. Don't even fucking clear it up. It doesn't matter. People will see where you are genuinely coming from when you keep saying the same shit that you're saying that you've said for 20 fucking years. That's it, okay? A lot of people yelled at me during the fucking Hogwarts drama. There were every trans content creator on Twitter yelled at me, okay, and said, you're a fucking piece of shit, you're transphobic. Oh, what, you can't play one fucking game that's transphobic? It was an idiotic fucking take from the jump. I said it a month in advance that this is entirely too popular of an IP. The best thing to do is not like try to do boycott. Is try to boycott this fucking IP that's completely devoid of the transphobic person that is making money off of it, and instead use it to fundraise or push the issue further. Everybody yelled at me, said that was incredibly transphobic. What the fuck did I do? I shut the fuck up. I said, you guys are wrong, but it doesn't matter. History will absolve me. It did. Who gives a shit? The game fucking sucked. Right-wingers like Ben Shapiro made commentary on it, saying that Hasan is terrified of trans people in his own audience, and that's why he also has to capitulate to the trans people in his own audience, when if I wanted to capitulate, I would have never said anything about Hogwarts whatsoever, and I would have just stayed the course and never played it and said, yes, it's a transphobic fucking game. But I didn't do that because I'm a stubborn piece of shit. I yelled at the people and I moved on. Many of those people who thought I was transphobic in that fucking fervor have come to the realization that they were maybe wrong. A lot of people don't want to admit that they're wrong, especially when tensions are fucking high. It doesn't matter. They finally quietly come to that conclusion that you were on, if they truly do believe that you are genuinely on their side. That's it. So just make your work speak for itself. You don't have to constantly fucking yell about random trans people online. And yes, that's what being the bigger progressive media person it revolves around. You have to do that. That's it.
All right, look, I'm going to take your advice. Let's move on because it's a microscopic issue.
There you go.
So
let's talk about defund the police now.
Okay, so the overall